morning I was just talking to God and thinking about the future. What do you want us to do next, Lord? Where do you want us? What do you want to happen? And he just dropped into my heart like he does. He doesn't say a lot. He says some few words, but they have a big meaning. And he just said, barley cake. So I knew that was in the Bible, but I hadn't read it for a long time. So I went and looked. And I began to read about Gideon's journey, his journey and walk of faith. And I got so much from it. But then I put it down. But then I kept picking it up. And I picked it up again at the beginning of the year. And again, I was just thinking about this. Barley cake, barley cake. You see, we're all part of God's church. Worldwide even, not just here in England. And we're all in the cake mix. We're all the ingredients that come together to make a cake, because you have to add things that are all different to make a cake. And we're all chosen as well for our differences. We all bring a different flavour to that cake. And at the beginning of the year, I asked God again, so what's this year going to look like? Because last year was pretty strange. And he said, a roller coaster ride. Ah, okay. That conjures up lots of different things, I'm sure, to each and every one of you. So, if you'd like to put picture 2 up. A roller coaster ride. I'm sure everybody's been on one, or if you're too frightened, you haven't. Les can go on them, but he ends up not being able to walk after because his balance goes. But when I was a child, I didn't like them. I wouldn't do them. I wouldn't go near them. I just used to watch them. But then later on, I became a youth leader at the age of 40, or around that age, I think, which is pretty late. But I had all these kids. I started off with 4, 2 of my own and 2 other Christians, and ended up sometimes 60 kids in a night. It was crazy. And these were not church kids. And I wanted to take them out to show them the world of Christianity, that it wasn't just in the village that we lived in, the small town, that it was different outside. So I started to take them to the Worldwide Message Tribe in Manchester, which blew their minds because there was full-on worship, loud, furious, dancing, but they liked it. They got addicted to it. So we had to go once a month down there. And then I took them to youth camps. I took 36 kids to youth camp. Some of them were social services children. I had to be vetted before I took them. And the whole week of coming in to God's presence, coming into live worship with, and surrounded by other teenagers like them. And of course, I had to do things that I didn't normally do, like be up to the waist in a mud pit, tug of war, losing my shoes in the mud pit, never to be seen again. I had to do the impossible for me in my own structure to lead them. And I took them to Alton Towers, where we have lots and lots of roller coasters. The Oblivion, that's one. It shoots out and it takes you to the edge of a massive, massive drop. And you dangle over the edge, looking down into this black hole. And you don't know where the black hole goes because it goes underground. And you're just reliant on the straps holding you in. And one of the girls I took with us to youth camp, which was an amazing event, she was in a wheelchair. And she so wanted to do the Oblivion. And I thought, I've got to do it with her. So I said, okay, we'll do it together. So she sat next to me and she was so excited when we finished. She absolutely adored it. And she wanted to go on again, which was very good because if you're in a wheelchair, you go to the front of the queue and you don't have to queue up. So that was great. And then the black hole, that one I didn't like because that takes you into darkness. You can't see where you're going. You're disorientated. and you're gripping on for dear life because it's just absolutely jet black. And it's a white knuckle ride. Nemesis, another one I didn't like. You speed around and you get flung from side to side. You get a bit bruised and you're shaken and you're disorientated when you come off because you've been upside down as well at great speed. So that one as well. Well, I'm going to look at Gideon and come back to that. Our lives are like Gideon's, full of ups and downs. When we're full of faith, and then we're a little bit in doubt and uncertainty, or we feel fear, but we still do it. We still do it. That's what we're called to do, still do it. But if we stick to the track, right, if we stick to the track here on this roller coaster ride, we're going to get to the end. It has to finish. It has to finish. So we have to stick to it. And that's sticking to God. If we stick to God, we're going to be there. So can you put number 3 up, please? Picture. It's coming. Whoop. Oh, I like the way that fell away then. Right. This actually looks like this year's roller coaster ride. It's actually from Japan or China where they wear masks regularly. But it looks like us at the moment, doesn't it? On this year. We don't know what's coming. We've got to wear these things around our faces. Some people are at the top there and they're raising their hands. They're having a great time. They feel really safe. And others, like this poor little boy here, is gripping on for dear life. He's rather small to go on something like that. That would be me. Yeah. It used to be me. Yeah. So that's what we look like this year. So I'm going to leave that up so you can all think of yourselves in those seats. They are socially isolated if you look as well. There's a bit of space here, there and everywhere. So, yeah. So, Gideon was called, he was chosen by God to deliver Israel from the hands of the Midianites, who had him locked down. That's a familiar word, isn't it? Locked down. They'd come and stolen their wheat crops, only leaving them with barley, which is quite a big crop, but they ridiculed them over that because barley was seen as a crop for the poorest of poor. First thing Gideon needed to learn was his identity. And actually, the songs that Les chose this morning were about identity. He didn't know what I was doing and I didn't know what he was doing. So you like it when God turns up and pulls the strings together and ties them. Yeah. Identity. Not how we see ourselves. That's part of identity, but not what's important. It's how God sees us. The first year of Celebrate School of Supernatural Ministry, which Liz and Stuart, our pastors as well, run. And I didn't start it early. I started it later in life. But I still needed to learn that I had lost my identity of how God saw me. I couldn't stand in that place. So the first year, they always work on your identity. And that is really, really good. And it's a great place to start. Gideon didn't feel that he was up to this role that God had called him to deliver Israel from the hands of the oppressor. I'm not sure about that. But Judges 6, if you read it, maybe later, because I'm not going to read the whole thing, there's too much. But you go back and you find out for yourself what it's saying to you. God was reassuring him all the time. He called him in verse 12 of 6, the angels said, God is with you, you mighty man of courage. Wouldn't you like an angel to come and say that to you? I would. Verse 14, the Lord said to him, go in your might. In your might, did you hear that? In your might, wow. And you will save Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you? And that's a question that came right at Gideon. He had to think about that. He had to think about that. The Lord said to him, Go. The Lord said to him, Go in your might, and you will save Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not said you? And sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Again, verse 16 says, Surely I will be with you, and you will smite the Midianites as one man. One man. He was hearing, but not letting that truth sink from his hearing into his heart. And it was not becoming his identity. What is God saying to you about your identity in him? Are you believing what you see or hear? And is it sinking into your heart? And when it sinks into heart, are you walking it out? Are you walking out your identity in life? You see, Gideon still needed reassurance. He hears God and the angel, but he still asks for a sign. And God is so patient, isn't he? He's patient with me, I know, and he's patient with him. His request is granted. And he gets this miracle where there's a cake and there's broth, and he pours it over and then puts his rod on and it sets on fire. Read it for yourself in verse 19, because I didn't do a very good job of that. Just read it. So there again, he gets his miracle. Reassured Gideon at last moves on. We all need reassurance from time to time. We spend time, that's important, reassuring our children, grandchildren, and people around us of their identity and God's love. Now, it's time for him to face his first challenge that God asks him to do. God tells him to tear down his family altar to the god Baal and cut down and burn the symbol of the goddess Asherah. Build an altar to God in its place. Now, that wasn't an easy start in place, was it? It was a serious. He's got to clean up his own backyard. He's got to get rid of it, out of his family. False gods, no way. They have to go. Baal was known as well for child sacrifice, and that makes me physically sick. And there's a picture I saw on the internet of him with horns, looking like an animal, whole body of a man holding a child. And that is sickening, isn't it? And I also thought about that, and as I was thinking about that, I felt like God said, it's the same challenge now. So I went on the internet. Rebecca is here with me today. We went to Cambodia and we stood amongst children being trafficked and young girls. And it was a very, very dark place, a very dark place. And I just thought, okay then, what are the statistics of that? Go away. Right. So the missing children. It says one missing child is one too many, and I agree with that. It says in Australia, it's estimated 20,000 children are reported missing every year. In Canada, an estimated 45,288 children are reported missing. Germany, an estimated 100,000 are reported missing every year. India, an estimated 96,000 children go missing every year. In Jamaica, an estimated 1,984 children were reported missing in 2015. Sometimes it's hard for updated figures. In Russia, the estimated 45,000 children. In Spain, an estimated 20,000 children. United Kingdom, an estimated 112,853 children go missing every year. The United States, 460,000 children reported missing every year. And it says, this, however, is only a snapshot of the problem. In many countries, the statistics are missing. And I bet they're missing from Cambodia. I tried to find them, and there was pages of stuff, but I couldn't find a clear identified number. And some of them, the cases are closed. The lack of numbers and reporting is a struggle, and so they're not as accurate as they should be, and I'm sure there are a lot more than that. Child trafficking in England has gone up 45%. So, is it any different, or is it still the same war that was going on in this time? On this year of our roller coaster ride, we will need to stop and examine ourselves. Are there any false gods, habits, etc. in our lives that need to be torn down for us to move closer to God? We can collect rubbish along the way. Liz does so-sos, and we regularly clear out people's rubbish, and there's been some pretty tough rubbish that needs clearing out. And it's good that people are realising that they need change and they need to clear stuff out. Tearing down false gods is so very important. If we look at Exodus 20, we can find the first commandment out of 10. It says, "You shall have no other gods before me." The second commandment, "You shall not make idols." Gideon became famous for what he did. He tore down this idol. He went, he tore it down, he got rid of it out of his family, out of the area. So many people were following at that time who needed to be redirected back to God. But he became famous for that. They called him Jabul, meaning let Baal contend with him. And everyone was waiting for Baal to kill him. You see, we need to recalculate. We have a big God and a small enemy. We're always saying this here, and our minds have to recalculate things like little COVID, big God. God is bigger than COVID. It's bigger than what's happening worldwide. He is in control. And we need to get the right mindset for this year. Verse 34 says, "But the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with himself and took possession of him." I absolutely love that. God, please come and take possession of me. God clothed him with himself and took possession. Wow, that is just, we have to make time for God to come. And we have to be before him for that to happen. But that brought about a change. It brought about a change in Gideon. And we have to get into intimacy with God and time before him to receive that. This year, make time for God encounters in his presence. Get overwhelmed by him, because that's what he wants to do to you. You don't have to plead. That's what he wants to do with you. You see, then Gideon blew a trumpet and something happened. He blew a trumpet and supernaturally an army came and were formed. So he had this massive army. You'd think he would be confident, wouldn't you? Can I have picture number 4 on? You think he would be confident in being of God being with him. But no, Gideon asked again. We see not just for one sign this time, but 2 signs back to back. And here's what he said. And Gideon said to God, If you will deliver Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I'll put a fleece of wool out on the threshing floor. If there is dew on it only, and it's dry all on the ground, I shall know that you will deliver Israel into my hand, as you have said. And so it was so. When he rose early in the morning and squeezed the dew out of the fleece, he wrung it into a bowl full of water. And Gideon said to God, let not your anger be kindled against me. I will speak, but this once. Let me make a trial, only this once, with the fleece. I pray you, let it now be dry. Only upon the fleece and upon all the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night, for it was dry, and the fleece only, and there was dew all on the ground. That bit really spoke to me as I read it, because it speaks to me of a loving Father God. His heart for Gideon. He was patient. I think if I was him, I'd have got a bit annoyed by now that Gideon still needed proof that he was going to be with him. But the loving Father, I just think that's so loving. Gave him 2 more so he could evaluate that God was with him. He just reassured him yet again. Young Christians usually ask for a sign, and they're unsure when they hear from God. But as we mature and know God's leading, and we begin to operate in faith, so we have seeds of faith from the past where we've known God's turned up, just like Gideon did, and we sow it into our present time. We remember what he's done. When the Israelites were in the desert, they put stones very regularly as markers for what God had done. And we have that in our lives. Maybe let him have a sign, because what was he going to do next? In chapter 7, verse 2, God tells him to send all the fearful and trembling home. 22,000 men went home, leaving 10,000. We can be double-minded. We can feel fear, but we can do things afraid. I love this. When fear knocks on your door, rat-a-tat-tat, let faith answer. Then again, God reduced his army. Ones that bowed down to drink and weren't taking notice properly of what was going on around, he sent them home. So 300 left. The others that stood and drank from their hand stayed. Now we see Gideon sent down by God to the camp of the Midianites. God knows he will be fearful, so tells him to take a friend. We all like to have a friend by our sides at times like that, don't we? We so need our friends at the moment to get through this year. My friend Jenny has left, but I can have a phone call with her and be on for an hour and a half. My ear is hurting by the time I'm finished. I've got a friend in Spain. I often am on a phone call for an hour with her because I love my friends and I want to keep them close to me. You see, again, God had already set up ahead of time what he was going to show Gideon. And if we read in 7 verse 11, and you shall hear what they say, and afterwards your hands shall be strengthened to go down against the camp. Then he went down to Perah, his servant, to the outpost of the camp of the armed men. And the Midianites and the Amorites were all sons of the east along the valley like locusts of a multitude, and their camels were without number as a sand on the seashore. When Gideon arrived, and behold, a man was telling a dream to his comrade, and he said, Behold, I dreamt a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of the Midianites, and came to the tent and struck it, so that it fell, and turned it upside down, so that the tent lay flat. And his comrade replied, This is nothing else but the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, and son of Israel. Into his hand God has given the Midianites and all his hosts. When Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshipped and returned to the camp of Israel and said, Arise, for the Lord has given the hand of the hosts, the Midianites, into our hands. So why did they know what it meant? This was the enemy. How did they know what it meant? Was it Gideon and his army? It was because of the barley cake. They had been left to eat for so long. Barley is not as good to make bread with. It crumbles like cake. Yet this crumbling poor man's food cake took out all the tents and turned them upside down. So though it doesn't look anything worthwhile, it took out the camp. Such a change now in Gideon. His faith had got matured at last, long last. He began to talk about the battle before him as though it was already won. I've been waiting a long time for that. Waiting a long time. It was a real roller coaster ride of relationship with God to get him to that point. A very important lesson for us, I think, is that Gideon worshipped before the battle was won. He didn't wait till he'd already won to worship. He worshipped before, as if it had happened. And the battle itself was absolutely amazing. It's a demonstration of our faith. We must worship this year no matter what. The battle was won not with a sword, although this was an army, or any shedding of blood, but by 300 men blowing trumpets and shouting, with empty pitchers, with lights, and then they smashed them. And the mighty enemy ran away like scared people, just at that. That was God showing his hand. He won the battle for them. That was his intention from the very beginning. But he wanted to take them on a journey of faith. He will win this COVID battle for us. And we will come out of it stronger with God alongside us all the way. And our personal, whatever it looks like, roller coaster of life and faith, it's so important to remember it. Ephesians 6:12 says, For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the ruler of this dark world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. My mum used to have a saying, she said, nothing's new under the sun. And when we look back at what he was facing, it isn't much different than we're facing now. We look at this and think, this is strange what's going on. Is it real? Is it not real? It's a battle, and it's a heavenly battle, and that's where we're fighting. Pray, I think prayer this year has to go sky high, and I literally mean that. 2 Chronicles 7 and 14, if, and it's a question God asks, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear them from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. I think as a country we've let a lot of things go, and we need to reclaim them back. We need to tear down some idols, and we need to stand in prayer because it's powerful. And God hears us and he answers us because we are on the winning side. There is nothing else to be done. God has it all in hand. We just have to find our place. What is our journey of faith? I love this picture. It's linked to a song. And I am strong when I am on your shoulders. And when we get on God's shoulders, we see a different perspective of what's going on. And that's where he wants to put us, so we can pray effectively. We can see what is happening and we can target it with prayer. And what a beautiful picture again of the Father's love, lifting us up as children onto his shoulders so we can see what he sees and we can know what he knows. So wherever you are on your roller coaster this year, remember you're not alone. You're going to learn a lot. Some of it might be difficult, some of it will be very good. But I hope and pray that we all come out of it different, and the church in the UK wakes up and we become the voice again that we've lost. Thank you.